Hello, friends. We are very interested to know which cities you are listening to us from, so quickly like and write in the comments where you are from. Also, share what shocking stories happened in your city or maybe even with you personally. Subscribe because the next story could be about your city or even your personal drama. Now let's dive into a new exciting story. David Turner, a 38-year-old engineer with tired eyes and gray streaks in his dark hair, stood at the kitchen table in his home in Tampa Bay, Florida. There was a stack of papers on the table, divorce papers, neatly folded as if they were a report on a completed project. He ran his fingers along the edge of the sheet, feeling the roughness of the paper, and sighed. His marriage to Laura, once full of warmth and promise, has long turned into a cold desert. In recent months, she had been moving away, becoming a stranger, fewer words, more silence, more nights spent at work. David was no fool. He suspected that she had someone, and today he was going to call it a day. The sun was already setting, flooding the kitchen with a soft orange light through the wide windows. David looked at his watch, 1847. Laura was supposed to be back from work in about 10 minutes, unless, of course, she was delayed again with another urgent meeting. He took a glass of whiskey from the table, took a sip, and winced at the sharp taste. Alcohol did not relieve tension, but at least it drowned out thoughts. Today it will all end, he muttered under his breath, looking at the documents. You won't get a cent. The prenuptial agreement they signed back when they laughed at the idea of divorce was his trump card. If Laura cheated, and he was sure of it with the detective's reports in hand, she would leave empty-handed. No alimony, no division of property. David spent years saving money for their future, the trips they dreamed of. The door would have slammed long ago if Laura had been punctual. But time passed, and the silence in the house became heavier. David finished his whiskey, put the glass on the table, and went to the window. The street was deserted, no cars, no neighbors walking their dogs. Only the palm trees swayed slightly in the wind, and somewhere in the distance a seagull screamed. "Where the hell are you?" he muttered, taking his phone out of his jeans pocket. I dialed her number. The beeps came one after another, but there was no answer. Then the answering machine. "You have reached Laura Turner. Leave a message after the tone." David clutched the phone until his knuckles turned white. "Laura, it's me. It's already 7 in the evening. Where are you? Call me as soon as you can." He tried to speak calmly, but his voice trembled with irritation. He hung up and threw the phone on the sofa. He returned to the table, took the documents, and began to reread them for the 100th time. Everything was in order. Signatures, seals, conditions. The lawyer assured us that the matter was simple. David was confident. In recent weeks, he had noticed little things: the smell of someone else's perfume on her clothes, crumpled receipts from a cafe where they had never gone together, evasive answers to simple questions. He didn't make a scene, he just hired a detective, stored up his anger, and got ready. By 8 o'clock, my patience began to wear thin. David dialed her number again. Again the beeps, again the answering machine. He threw the phone on the table and walked around the room, clenching and unclenching his fists. "Damn it, Laura, are you kidding me?" he shouted into the void. The voice bounced off the walls, but there was no answer. He went to the refrigerator, took out a bottle of beer, and opened it with such force that the lid flew off somewhere under the table. He took a long sip, trying to calm down. Maybe she was late to work, maybe the phone died, but deep down he knew something was wrong. Laura could be cold, distant, even deceitful, but she always warned if she was late. This has been her rule since the time when they first started dating. David sat down on the couch, put his beer on the coffee table, and stared at the ceiling. Memories were spinning in my head. Their first meeting is at a mutual friend's party, where Laura, in a blue dress, laughs at his awkward joke about bridges. Their wedding is modest but warm in the backyard of her parents' house. The first year of marriage, when they argued about what paint color to choose for the bedroom. Where did it all go wrong? When did she stop looking at him with the same tenderness? By 9 o'clock, anxiety began to replace irritation. He picked up the phone again and dialed her number, the same result. Then he called her colleague, Sarah, with whom Laura sometimes had lunch. "Hello." Sarah's voice was sleepy, as if he had woken her up. "Sarah, this is David. Sorry it's late. Is Laura with you? Or do you know where she is?" He tried to speak evenly, but there was anxiety in his voice. "David? No, I didn't see her after work. She left around 5, I think. She said she was going home. Did something happen?" Wariness appeared in her tone. "I don't know yet. She doesn't answer calls. Maybe she was delayed somewhere, but—" He hesitated. "If she contacts you, tell her to call me, okay?" "Certainly. Are you okay? Your voice is kind of tense." "Everything is fine. Just tired. Thank you, Sarah." He quickly said goodbye and hung up. David stood up and walked around the house, looking into the rooms as if Laura might be hiding somewhere inside. Their bedroom, the bed is neatly made, its side is empty. Bathroom, her toothbrush is in place, cosmetics are on the shelf. It looked like she just stepped out for a minute. But the clock was ticking, and with every minute his heart beat faster. By 10 o'clock in the evening, he could no longer sit still. He grabbed the car keys, threw on his jacket, and went outside. The cool March air hit his face, but he barely noticed it. I got into my old Ford, started the engine, and drove to Laura's office, a small building in downtown Tampa Bay where she worked as a sales manager. The streets were almost empty, only rare cars rushed past. David turned on the radio, but immediately turned it off. The noise was only annoying. He reached the office in 15 minutes. The building was dark, the windows were closed with blinds. There is not a single car in the parking lot, including her white Hyundai. He went out, walked around the building, looked into the windows, but saw nothing. Silence. "Where are you, Laura?" he whispered, returning to the car. There was a lump in my throat and panic growing in my chest. Returning home, he dialed her number again. Nothing. By midnight, David realized that he could wait no longer. He picked up the phone and dialed 911. "I'm listening." The operator's voice was calm, almost mechanical. "Hello, this is David Turner. My wife, Laura Turner, did not return home. She was supposed to be here at 7 o'clock, but she isn't. The phone doesn't answer. I don't know what to do." The words came out quickly, jumbled. "Give me the address, David." The operator remained unperturbed. "And describe her. Age, appearance, what she was wearing." "We live at 142 South Bay Road. She's 35, shoulder-length blonde hair, average height. I don't know what she was wearing today, but probably something businesslike. She works in the office. Maybe a blue suit or a black dress." He fell silent, trying to remember, but his thoughts were confused. "Fine. Have you checked where she could be? Friends? Relatives?" "Yes, I called her colleague. She left work at 5. I went to the office. There is no car there. I don't know what else to do." The voice trembled. "Stay where you are, David. We will send a patrol to your home and begin an inspection. If you remember something, call right away." The operator gave a couple more instructions and hung up. David put the phone on the table and sat down on the sofa. The divorce papers lay nearby, a reminder of how this evening began. He wanted freedom. He wanted an end to their lies. But now, looking at the empty house, he felt only fear. Something happened. The noise of a motor was heard outside the window. A patrol car drove up to the house. David stood up, took a deep breath, and went to open the door. The morning sun filtered through the curtains, casting long shadows across the living room floor. David sat on the couch, clutching an empty coffee mug. He did not sleep all night. His eyes were red. There were dark circles under them. The patrolman left around 3 in the morning, promising to start searching for Laura, but since then there has been no news. The silence in the house was oppressive, interrupted only by the occasional ticking of the wall clock. David kept glancing at the phone lying on the table, but the screen remained dark. He got up, walked around the room, and stopped at the window. The street was already alive. A neighbor was walking his dog, and the postman rode his bicycle. A typical day in Tampa Bay is hot, humid, with the smell of the sea in the air. But for David, the world seemed to stand still. He didn't know what to do next: wait for a call from the police or rush to look for Laura himself. One question was spinning in my head. Where could she have gone? There was a knock on the door. David shuddered, put the mug on the windowsill, and hurried to open it. There were two people standing on the threshold, a woman in a strict gray suit and a man in a police uniform. The woman, short, with short dark hair and a penetrating gaze, extended her hand. "Mr. Turner, I'm Detective Rita Gonzalez. This is Officer Bradley. We're from the Tampa Bay Department. Can we come in?" Her voice was calm, but there was a sense of firmness in it. "Yes, of course." David stepped aside to let them through. "Any news?" "Let's sit down." Rita nodded towards the sofa, and they went into the living room. Officer Bradley remained standing by the door, arms crossed, while Rita sat opposite David, taking a notepad from her bag. "We found your wife's car. It's parked at the old Tampa Bay Pier, about 10 miles away. Do you know this place?" David frowned, trying to remember. "Pierce?" "Yes, we sometimes went there in the summer watched the sunset. But that was a long time ago. What's her car doing there?" "We don't know yet." Rita opened the notebook and wrote something down. Inside were her phone, purse, and keys. "The doors are not locked. Can you explain why she might have left all this in the car?" "No." David shook his head, feeling a chill run down his spine. "This doesn't sound like Laura. She always takes her bag with her, even if she goes out for 5 minutes. And the phone. She doesn't part with it." "We found something else." Rita looked at him carefully, as if studying his reaction. A woman's shoe was floating in the water, not far from the pier. Black, low-heeled with a strap on the side. "Does this sound familiar to you?" David froze. He remembered how Laura had bought these shoes a couple of months ago, simple but elegant for work. She also joked that they were ideal for long meetings. "Yes, she had those." His voice became quieter. "Do you think? Could she have fallen into the water?" "We are considering all options." Rita leaned back on the sofa, not taking her eyes off him. "A car on the pier, things inside, a shoe in the water, it could be an accident. Or something else. When was the last time you spoke to Laura?" "Yesterday morning, before she left for work." David ran his hand over his face, trying to concentrate. "She was as usual. She got ready, drank coffee, and said that she would be back by 7. Nothing strange." "And after that?" Rita tapped her pen on the notepad. "Have you tried to contact her?" "Yes, I called several times in the evening. At first, I thought she was delayed, but then—" He hesitated. He began to worry. "That's why I called you." Rita nodded, writing down something else. Officer Bradley coughed to get his attention. "Mr. Turner, do you mind if I look around the house? Just to make sure nothing was missed." His voice was low, with a slight southern accent. "Of course, look." David waved his hand, pointing towards the corridor. "But there's nothing there. I've already checked everything." Bradley nodded and headed deeper into the house, and Rita continued. "Tell me, how has your relationship with Laura been lately? Everything is fine?" David tensed. He didn't want to post everything at once about the divorce, about suspicions of infidelity. But lying to the police is also not an option. "Not really." He looked down at his hands. "We had problems. In recent months, she has become cold and distant. We hardly spoke." "Problems? Which ones exactly?" Rita leaned a little closer. Her tone remained neutral, but her eyes showed interest. "Just family disagreements." David shrugged, trying to avoid a direct answer. "Nothing serious, but there was tension." "I understand." Rita made another note. "Didn't she mention yesterday that she was going somewhere after work? Maybe to friends, to a bar?" "No, nothing like that. She said she was going home." He shook his head. "If she was planning something, I would know. Or at least suspected." Rita nodded, thoughtfully tapping her hand on her knee. At that moment, Bradley returned, holding a plastic bag with something inside. "I found this in the bedroom, in the trash can." He showed the bag to David. Inside was a crumpled receipt. A receipt from the Marina Cafe dated the day before yesterday. "The amount is small, but the time is 2014. Is this normal for your wife?" David took the bag, looking at the receipt through the plastic. Marina is a small cafe by the bay, a couple of miles from Laura's office. He had never been there, and Laura never mentioned him. No, it's not normal, he frowned. She didn't say she went there. She is usually home by 7 and not in a cafe at 8 in the evening. Maybe meeting with someone? Bradley suggested, crossing his arms. I don't know, David returned the package, feeling irritation boiling inside. Maybe with someone. I'm telling you, she's become secretive. Rita and Bradley looked at each other. The detective closed her notepad and stood up. Okay, Mr. Turner, we'll take the receipt and check the cafe. Our experts are already inspecting the car, and we will try to recover data from Laura's phone. If anything comes up, we will contact you. And if you remember something important, call me. She handed him a business card. Thank you. David took the card, barely looking at it. Do you think she's alive? Rita paused, choosing her words. It's too early to say, but we are doing everything to find out what happened. Try to rest. You need it. They left, leaving David alone. He followed them with his gaze through the window until the car disappeared around the bend. Then he returned to the sofa, collapsed on it, and closed his eyes. My thoughts were confused. A car at the pier, a shoe in the water, a receipt from a cafe, all this added up to a strange, disturbing picture. The phone rang, making him jump. He grabbed it, hoping to see Laura's name, but the screen showed the number of Sarah, her colleague. Hello, Sarah? His voice was hoarse from fatigue. David, hi. How are you? Any news? She sounded alarmed. The police found her car at the pier, with a bag, a phone, and one shoe in the water. He swallowed. They don't know what to think. Oh my God, Sarah gasped. It's horrible. Listen, I just remembered. Laura has been kind of strange in recent days. Nervous, maybe. Yesterday, she left earlier than usual, saying she needed to get some things done. I didn't pay attention, but now. Settle? David straightened up. She didn't say what exactly. No, I just threw it casually and left. I thought maybe it was family matters or something with work. She didn't go into detail. Sarah hesitated. David, are you sure everything was fine with you? No, I'm not sure. He clenched his teeth. Thank you, Sarah. If you remember anything else, call. He hung up without waiting for an answer. Sorting something out. These words echoed in my head. What was she hiding? And why just yesterday, when he was about to give her divorce papers? David stood up, went to the table, and took the papers that were still lying untouched. I ran my finger over her name, Laura Turner. Once it caused warmth, now only questions. Outside the window, the sun rose higher, filling the room with light. But for David, the day remained dark. David sat on the couch, staring at the empty coffee table. Morning had long turned into day. The sun flooded the living room with a hot light, but he did not notice either the heat or the time. After the police left, he tried to occupy himself with something. He walked around the house, turned on the news, but turned everything off without listening to the end. The silence was oppressive, and every rustle outside the window made him tremble, expecting new news. The words of Rita Gonzalez, her calm but persistent tone, were spinning in my head. They suspected something, and this feeling did not go away. The knock on the door sounded sharp, like a gunshot. David stood up, feeling his legs feel heavy, and went to open the door. Rita Gonzalez stood in the doorway, her dark hair slightly disheveled from the wind. Sergeant Kane was nearby, tall, with a stern face and arms crossed over his chest. Rita had a tablet in her hands, and her gaze was sharp, almost accusing. Mr. Turner, we need to talk again, she said, stepping forward. There is new data. Come in. David stepped back, letting them into the living room. He closed the door and followed them, trying to control himself. What did you find? Rita sat on the sofa, placing the tablet on her lap, and Kane took a position against the wall, as if ready to block the exit. David sank into the chair opposite, feeling his heart pounding in his chest. We checked the cameras at the pier, Rita began, opening the tablet. Laura's car appeared there at about 7:40 in the evening. The guard saw a woman who looked like her blonde hair, business suit. She sat in the car for about 10 minutes, then got out and went to the water. He said she looked upset. That's all we have about her movements for now. David nodded, trying to comprehend what he had heard. Upset. But why would she go to the pier? She had never been there alone. This is what we want to understand. Rita tapped her finger on the tablet. But there is something else. We found tire tracks next to her car. They matched the tread on your Ford. You drive an F-150, right? David froze, his eyes widening. He nodded slowly, feeling a chill run down his spine. Yes, I have a Ford, but I wasn't at the pier. I told you, yesterday around 10, I went to her office to check if she was there. Then he returned home and waited. Are you sure? Kane stepped forward, his voice low and firm. The tracks are fresh, and they are from a car like yours. We took samples from your driveway for analysis. The results will be out tomorrow. I wasn't there. David raised his voice, squeezing the armrests of his chair. You can check my phone, GPS, whatever. I didn't go to the pier. Rita raised her hand to stop him. We'll check, Mr. Turner. But for now, it looks suspicious. Laura's car is on the pier. Her things are inside. Traces of your car are nearby. Do you understand what this means? I understand. David clenched his teeth. You think I did something to her? But I didn't touch her. I waited for her at home all night. Okay, let's clarify. Rita opened the tablet and started typing. You said this morning that you and Laura had problems in your relationship. Tell us more. What happened between you? David hesitated. He didn't want to spill everything at once, but their questions and Kane's tone drove him into a corner. The tire tracks already made him a suspect, and he felt that remaining silent would only make the situation worse. He had a package of documents from a private detective evidence of Laura's infidelity, which he collected a couple of weeks ago. He had no intention of using them against her publicly, he just wanted a divorce. But now, under their gaze, he realized that he would have to tell. Okay, he took a deep breath, looking at Rita. Everything went wrong with Laura for a long time. I knew she was cheating on me. I have evidence, photographs, transcripts, a report from a detective. In recent months, she had been returning late, hiding her phone, and lying about where she had been. I hired someone to make sure, and when I was convinced, I decided to get a divorce. Yesterday, I wanted to talk to her, tell her that I know, and hand over the divorce papers. Rita raised her eyebrows, her fingers hovering over the tablet. Kane chuckled as if he had heard something he expected. Evidence of treason? Rita looked at him carefully. And where are these documents? In the chest of drawers in the bedroom. David nodded towards the corridor. You can look if you want. Everything is their pictures of her with another man, hotel bills, dates. I didn't mean to blackmail her or anything. I just wanted a divorce. And you were sure that she was cheating. Rita wrote something down. Did she know that you hired a detective? No, he shook his head. I didn't tell her. I wanted to take her by surprise yesterday so that she wouldn't get out of it. We had a prenuptial agreement. If she cheats, she loses everything. I just wanted to end this honestly. Kane crossed his arms, his gaze becoming even harder. So you had a contract and evidence. And if she disappeared, you wouldn't have to prove anything in court, right? There would be no need for a divorce. David jumped up, his voice breaking into a shout. Are you serious? Do you think I killed her because of this? I didn't touch her. I wanted a divorce, that's all. I had proof. I didn't have to kill her. Calm down, Kane stepped towards him, putting his hand on his shoulder. We're not blaming you yet, but you have a motive. And tire tracks, too. Do you understand what this looks like? I understand. David sank back into the chair, covering his face with his hands. But I wasn't at the pier. I don't know how these tracks ended up there. Maybe someone else with a similar car. There are plenty of Fords in Tampa. Maybe. Rita closed the tablet and stood up. We will check other options. But until the tire results come back, you remain under suspicion. Where do you say the documents are? In the bedroom, in the chest of drawers, top drawer. David waved his hand. Take it if you need it. Kane nodded and went into the bedroom, and Rita remained, looking at David. If everything is as you say, that explains a lot, she said. But we need to check your evidence and alibi. Don't leave town, Mr. Turner. And if you remember anything else, call. Kane returned with a package of documents, a thick envelope sealed with tape. He handed it to Rita, and they headed towards the door. David watched them through the window until the car disappeared around the bend. Then he collapsed on the sofa, feeling fatigue and fear squeezing his chest. He told the truth about the betrayal, about the detective, about the divorce, but instead of relief, he only received new suspicions. Tire tracks. How could they be from his car? He didn't go to the pier, that was for sure. He stood up, walked to the window, and looked at his Ford in the driveway. The car sat there all night after driving to Laura's office. He didn't touch her after that. While, maybe someone set him up, but who and why? The phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. He grabbed it. The number was unfamiliar. Hello? His voice trembled. David, this is Tom, said a familiar deep voice. Tom was a mutual friend of Laura and him. I heard that she disappeared. What's happening? The police found her car at the pier. David squeezed the phone. And now they think I'm involved. But I wasn't there. Seriously? Tom whistled. This is nonsense. You're not like that. What did you tell them? What did I know about her betrayal? David sighed. I had evidence from the detective. I wanted to get a divorce yesterday, and now I'm in trouble. Hold on, brother, Tom lowered his voice, and be careful of the cops. They love to cling to those who are closest to them. Thank you, Tom. David hung up and threw the phone on the table. All he wanted was to get a divorce and forget Laura, and now he found himself at the center of suspicions that could ruin his life. The ringing of the phone jerked him out of his thoughts. David grabbed the phone, hoping for news, but an unfamiliar number appeared on the screen. He frowned and pressed reply. Hello? His voice was hoarse and tired. Mr. Turner, this is Detective Gonzalez. Rita's familiar firm tone rang out. We have something new. Can you drive to the station? This will take no more than an hour. To the station. David straightened up, feeling his heart beat faster again. Is it something serious? We reviewed your detective's report. She paused, as if choosing her words. Questions have arisen. It's better to discuss it here. Okay, he swallowed. I'll be there in half an hour. We're waiting, Rita hung up, leaving him in silence. David stood up and grabbed his car keys and jacket. My thoughts were confused. He got into his Ford, started the engine, and drove out onto the road. The streets of Tampa Bay were busy with cars honking and people rushing home after work. David turned on the radio to drown out his thoughts, but the voice of the presenter talking about the weather only irritated him. He turned it off and focused on the road. It was a 15-minute drive to the site, and every minute seemed like an eternity. When he entered the department building, he was greeted by the smell of coffee and paper. Rita waited at the counter, holding that same Jim Crow envelope. Kane stood nearby, scrolling through something on his phone. Mr. Turner, here, Rita nodded towards the interrogation room. This is not official, just a conversation. David followed her, feeling his palms sweat. The room was small, with gray walls and a single window covered with blinds. There was an envelope on the table and Rita's tablet next to it. Kane closed the door and sat down opposite, crossing his arms. So, Rita opened the envelope and pulled out several photographs. Your detective did a good job. We found out who this man is. His name is Mark Evans, Laura's new boss at her company. Did you know about him? David looked at the photo, the same man in a suit, with Laura in the Marina Cafe. He shook his head. No, I didn't know who he was. The detective gave me only photos and facts where they met, when I didn't ask for a name. It was enough for me to know that she was cheating. I understand, Rita nodded, pulling out another piece of paper, a bank statement. We called Mark this morning. He didn't deny it. He admitted that he and Laura had been having an affair for the last 6 months. And here's what's interesting. A week before her disappearance, he transferred $50,000 to her. He said it was for their new life. 50,000. David frowned, feeling anger boiling inside. What other new life? Mark says they were planning to escape. Kane spoke for the first time, his voice low and harsh. Laura told him that she wants to leave you, that you are, as she put it, a furious man. She was afraid that if you found out about the betrayal, you would kill her. David froze, his eyes widening. He clenched his fists until his nails dug into his palms. "Will I kill her?" He almost shouted. "This is a lie. I never laid a hand on her. Yes, I was angry when I found out, but I wanted a divorce, not this." "Calm down." Rita raised her hand, her tone remaining even. "We are not saying that this is true. We retell what Mark said. He claims Laura convinced him to give him money so they could move to another city, possibly Miami or even out of state. He planned to join her later after she had dealt with you." "Will he deal with me?" David leaned back in his chair, trying to comprehend what he had heard. So she was planning to run away and leave everything home, work, me. "That's what Mark says." Rita opened the tablet and showed the recording of the interrogation. A man of about 40, with dark hair and light stubble, appeared on the screen. He sat in the same room, nervously fiddling with the cuff of his shirt. Rita's voice came from the speaker. "Mr. Evans, tell us what connected you with Laura Turner." Mark coughed, looking at the table. We had an affair. It started 6 months ago. First, just flirting at work, then meeting outside the office. She said she was unhappy in her marriage, that her husband is aggressive, that he finds out about us and could kill her. I believed her. She wanted to leave him, start all over again. I gave her money, 50,000. We planned to leave together. "When was the last time you saw her?" Rita's voice was calm but insistent. "The day before yesterday." Mark looked up. "She said she was leaving work early to get things done. I thought she was getting ready to leave. Then she didn't answer her calls, and I don't know what happened." Rita turned off the recording and looked at David. "It was the day before yesterday, the day before she disappeared." Matches what her colleague Sarah said, that Laura left early and was nervous. David gritted his teeth, feeling anger mixed with confusion. "She lied to him," he said quietly. "I'm not aggressive. I didn't threaten her. She made it up to get money out of him." "Perhaps," Rita shrugged, "but that's not all. We checked her phone, so far only the call log. The data is still being restored. The last call was to Mark at 6 in the evening yesterday. The conversation lasted 3 minutes. After that, there is silence. And what did he say about this call?" David leaned forward, his voice trembling. "That she was excited." Kane took the floor. "She said that everything is almost ready and that she would meet him later. He thought she was already on her way to a new place." David closed his eyes, trying to put the pieces together. Laura cheated on him with Mark, took his money, and planned to run away. But instead, she ended up at the pier with an abandoned car and a shoe in the water. What went wrong? "What does Mark think now?" he asked, opening his eyes. "Where does he think she is?" "He's shocked." Rita put the tablet in her bag. "He says he doesn't know what happened. I thought she had already left until I learned about the car from us. He doesn't have an alibi for the evening of her disappearance. He was home alone, but he can't prove it. So he is also a suspect?" David looked at her hopefully. "Yes," Kane nodded. "His motive is money, jealousy, whatever. But so do you, Mr. Turner. The tire tracks are still pointing towards you. And if Laura was afraid of you, as she told Mark, she lied." David hit the table with his fist. "I wanted a divorce, not her death. I had proof. I didn't need anything more." "We'll check Mark." Rita stood up, stopping him with a gesture. "And your tire tracks. Tomorrow there will be test results. Don't leave town just yet. And thank you for coming." David nodded silently, feeling the fatigue weighing on his shoulders. They left the room, leaving him alone. He looked at the empty table where the photographs of Laura and Mark used to be. Everything he knew about her was crumbling. She didn't just cheat, she schemed, she lied, she manipulated. Returning home, he threw the keys on the table and collapsed on the sofa. Mark's words were spinning in my head. "Aggressive. Will kill her." It was like a punch in the gut. He was never like this. Yes, he was angry when he learned the truth, but he kept everything to himself and was preparing a divorce. Now her lies were turning against him. David lay on the sofa, staring at the ceiling, while the shadows from the street lamps slowly crawled along the walls. He wrote a letter of resignation. Now he had no time for work. Evening fell on Tampa Bay, bringing with it a damp coolness, but the house was stuffy. He did not turn on the air conditioner, not finding the strength to get up. After talking with Rita Gonzalez and Kane at the station, my head was buzzing with questions. Mark Evans, the novel, $50,000, Laura's words that he was a furious man who could kill her, all this swirled in her thoughts like fragments of a nightmare. But one phrase, thrown casually by Rita, stuck in her mind: "We'll check her phone and accounts." Accounts. Their total score. He sat up abruptly, feeling the blood rush to his head. The joint account is the one into which he has been saving money for years for their joint plans. Travel, a new home, the life they once dreamed of. Laura had access to it, but they agreed not to touch it without discussion. David trusted her, or at least he used to trust her. Now, after everything he had learned, a feeling of foreboding began to stir in his chest. What if she didn't just take money from Mark? He stood up, walked to the table, and grabbed the laptop. His hands shook as he opened the lid and logged into the online bank. The password is their wedding date, which he did not change, despite everything. The screen loaded and David clicked on the joint account tab. The balance was displayed a second later, winning $247. He froze, staring at the number. It was impossible. Last time he checked, a couple of months ago, it was over $100,000. 123 to be exact. Where did the money go? David clicked on transaction history, scrolling down the list. His breathing quickened. The list was long, too long. Cash withdrawals, transfers, small write-offs. It all started 2 months ago. First, small amounts, $500, 1,000 too. Then more, 5,000, 10, 15. The last transaction, a withdrawal of $20,000, was made 4 days ago, 3 days before she disappeared. He clenched his fists, feeling anger rising from within. She cleaned out the account, almost reset it to zero. The money he had saved for years was gone. What a bitch, he hissed through his teeth, leaning back on the sofa. His voice trembled with rage and powerlessness. He closed his eyes, trying to calm down, but her smile, her lies, her urgent meetings stood before his eyes. All this time she was not just cheating, she was robbing him. The phone rang, making him jump. He grabbed at Rita Gonzalez's number. "Hello?" His voice was hoarse, barely restrained. "Mr. Turner, this is Detective Gonzalez." Her tone was businesslike, but there was tension in it. "Are you at home now?" "Yes," he swallowed, trying to pull himself together. "Anything else?" "We checked your total account." She paused, and David felt his heart skip a beat. Over the past 2 months, almost $120,000 have been withdrawn from him. The last transaction was $20,000, 4 days ago. Did you know about this? David clutched the phone until his knuckles turned white. "No," he said quietly, but his voice trembled. "I just checked it myself. She cleaned out the account. This was our money for the future." "I understand," Rita coughed, as if searching for words. "This complicates the picture. 20,000 in cash a few days before the disappearance is not an accident. Plus money from Mark Evans. She was raising funds. Escape?" David jumped up, starting to walk around the room. "She stole my money to run off with this Mark?" "Perhaps," Rita remained calm. "But for now, this is only a version. We are checking where the money went. Some was withdrawn in cash. Some was transferred to another account that we have not yet found. It will take time. Are you sure you haven't noticed anything strange with your finances before?" "No," he shook his head, although she didn't see it. "I haven't checked my account for a couple of months." Trusted her. We agreed that this was for big plans, that she wouldn't touch it without my consent. Apparently, I was an idiot. "Don't blame yourself," Rita sighed. "People often don't notice until it's too late." We also found something else on her phone. Messages to Mark a week before his disappearance. She wrote that everything will be resolved soon and that the money is almost ready. This confirms that she was preparing. David stopped at the window, looking out at the dark street. His breathing was heavy, anger mixed with pain. "So what now?" he asked. "Do you think she ran away, or did something go wrong?" "We don't know yet," Rita paused. "The tire tracks from your Ford are still in question. The test results will come in the morning." "I wasn't at the pier," he raised his voice. "How many times should I repeat? I didn't touch her." "We heard," Kane spoke in the background, his voice harsh. "But your motive is even stronger now. She stole your money, cheated on you. This could piss anyone off." "Yes, I'm angry," David almost shouted. "But I wanted a divorce, not her death. I had evidence from the detective. I didn't have to kill her." "We will check all versions," Rita intervened, stopping the argument. "We'll talk again tomorrow. For now, stay where you are. And try not to do anything impulsive." She hung up, leaving David in silence. He threw the phone on the sofa and walked around the room, clenching and unclenching his fists. 120,000. This was not just theft, it was betrayal, cold and calculating. David took the phone and dialed Tom's number. After 3 rings, the friend answered. "David, how are you there?" Tom's voice was sleepy, but alarmed. "She stole my money, Tom," David spoke quickly, the words coming out on their own. 120,000 from the account. For 2 months, she took them off slowly, but I didn't see her. And 20,000 before disappearing. "Damn," Tom whistled. "This is serious." "Yes," David clenched his teeth. "I was saving this for us. And she took everything and planned to run away with this mark. I told him that I would kill her if I found out. A lie to get more money out of him." "What a bitch," Tom snorted. "So what now? Are the police looking for her?" "Looking," David sighed, "but they still suspect me. Tomorrow there will be results of the tire analysis." "Listen, hold on," Tom lowered his voice. "This is some kind of nightmare." "Thank you, Tom." David hung up and threw the phone on the table. The doorbell rang loudly, like a gunshot. David shuddered, turned around, and went to open it. Standing in the doorway were Rita Gonzalez and Sergeant Kane. Rita's face was inscrutable, but something sharp flashed in her eyes. Kane looked stern as usual, holding a folder of papers. Behind them, a patrol car was visible, parked at the side of the road. "Mr. Turner, can we come in?" Rita did not wait for an answer, stepping forward. Her voice was businesslike, but there was tension in it. "Yes, of course." David stepped back to let them through. His heart beat faster. "Have the tire results arrived?" "We've arrived," Kane nodded, closing the door behind him. They walked into the living room and Rita sat down on the sofa, opening her tablet. Kane remained standing, placing the folder on the coffee table. David sank into the chair opposite, clasping his hands to hide his trembling. "So," Rita looked at him, her gaze was heavy. "The analysis confirmed. The tire tracks at the pier are from your Ford. The tread pattern, the wear, even the dirt from your driveway all match. Can you explain this?" David froze, feeling the blood drain from his face. He shook his head, trying to keep his voice level. "No, I can't. I haven't been to the pier. I told you that evening I only went to Laura's office around 10 to check if she was there. Then he returned home and waited. You can ask the neighbors, they saw that I was at home all night." Rita raised her eyebrows as she wrote something down on her tablet. Kane chuckled as he opened the folder and pulled out a piece of paper. "We asked," he said, his voice low and harsh. "We talked to your neighbors this morning. Mrs. Carter, across the street, said she saw your Ford in the driveway around 9 o'clock this evening. But then, according to her, the car drove off somewhere she is not sure of the time, but says that it was already dark. Mr. Lopez, to your left, didn't see anything at all. He says he was watching TV. But Miss Henderson, the old lady on the corner, says she saw you leaving around midnight. Only she is confused at first. She said that it was on Monday, then she corrected it to Tuesday. In general, the readings vary." David frowned, trying to remember. He drove to Laura's office, that's for sure, but got home before 11. Then he called the police around midnight. The car stood still all night, or did it? A thought flashed through his head, which he immediately discarded. He forgot that 2 days ago, on Monday, he went to pick up divorce papers from a lawyer. But it was not that evening, not on Tuesday, when Laura disappeared. Or is he confusing something? Fatigue and stress confused my thoughts. I didn't leave after 10, he said firmly, looking at Rita. Maybe Miss Henderson saw me on another day. I went to the lawyer on Monday to pick up divorce papers. But on Tuesday I was at home. I swear. To a lawyer? Rita bowed her head. Her fingers hovered over the tablet. What time was it? David hesitated, replaying that day in his head. Monday merged with the others into a solid lump of fatigue. In the afternoon, it seems, around 3, he shrugged. But it doesn't matter. I didn't go to the pier on Tuesday. Maybe someone else with a similar car. There are plenty of Fords in Tampa. Perhaps, Kane crossed his arms, his gaze becoming even heavier. But for now, we only have your tires. And a motive that is becoming stronger. She stole your money, 120,000, as you said yesterday. Cheated on you. This could piss anyone off. We talked to the neighbors about more than just you, she said, her tone remaining even. They mentioned Laura. Mrs. Carter said your wife has seemed depressed the last couple of weeks. She often sat on the porch alone, silent, looking into emptiness. Mr. Lopez noticed that she hardly spoke to him, although she always used to say hello. This matches what her colleague Sarah said, that Laura was nervous before her disappearance. David clenched his teeth, trying to comprehend what he had heard. Depressed? He didn't notice it or didn't want to notice it. In recent months, they lived like strangers. She left early, returned late, and he locked himself in his office with work and thoughts about divorce. She may have been depressed, but all he saw was her lies. I don't know why she was depressed, he said quietly. We almost didn't communicate. I knew that she was cheating and was preparing a divorce. Maybe she sensed that I was suspicious of something. Or I was afraid that you would find out. Kane stepped forward, his voice accusing. Mark Evans said she thought you were aggressive. That you could kill her if you find out about the betrayal. And now we know that you knew. And the money was gone. And your tires. It's all coming together, Mr. Turner. This is a lie. David jumped up, clenching his fists. She came up with this to manipulate Mark. I never threatened her. Ask anyone, I'm not like that. We asked. Rita closed the tablet and stood up. Your neighbors didn't see the quarrels, that's true. But they haven't seen you closely in recent months. You are withdrawn, just like her. And now we have evidence. Then check my car. David almost shouted. Take GPS, road cameras, whatever. I wasn't there. We're checking. Kane opened the folder and pulled out another sheet. Your phone didn't record any movements after 10 in the evening, that's true. But we haven't looked at the GPS in the car, yet this requires permission. And we will get it. In the meantime, you look more and more like a person who had motive and opportunity. David sank back into his chair, covering his face with his hands. His thoughts were confused. He didn't go to the pier, but he forgot to mention the trip to the lawyer on Monday, a small thing that could now turn against him. The neighbors were confused, and their words about the depressed Laura only added fuel to the fire. He felt a web of suspicion tighten around him. What are you going to do? He asked, looking up. His voice was hoarse and tired. We are continuing the investigation. Rita headed towards the door. Kane followed her. We are checking Mark Evans, looking for where the money went. But you remain under suspicion, Mr. Turner. Don't leave town. And see if you remember anything else. We'll be back tomorrow. The door slammed, and they left. David followed them through the window until the car disappeared around the corner. Then he collapsed on the sofa, feeling the fatigue falling on his shoulders. Inside, in an interrogation room with gray walls and a single window covered with blinds, sat Mark Evans. His dark hair was slightly disheveled, and the expensive suit he wore to work had been replaced by a simple shirt with the sleeves rolled up. He nervously fiddled with his cuff, looking at the table in front of him, where there was a folder with papers and a voice recorder. Across from him sat Detective Rita Gonzalez and Sergeant Kane, ready to begin another round of questions. Rita opened the folder, pulling out a bank statement and several printed messages. Her gaze was sharp but calm, as if she already knew where to direct the conversation. "Mr. Evans," she began, tapping her finger on the statement, "we called you again because new details have appeared. You said you transferred $50,000 to Laura Turner the week before she disappeared. Is that so?" Mark nodded, his eyes darting to the paper and then back to the table. "Yes," his voice was quiet but firm. "I already told you. It was money for us, for a new life." "Okay." Rita pulled out a printout of the messages and placed it in front of him. "Here are your correspondences with Laura over the past 2 weeks. She wrote to you on March 15th. The money is almost ready. I'll decide everything soon. And on March 17th, the day before the disappearance, everything is almost there. Wait for me. Do you confirm that these are your messages?" Mark leaned over, skimming the text. His fingers clenched into a fist. "Yes, she wrote this." He looked up at Rita. "She was getting ready to leave. We agreed that I would join her later." Later, Kane crossed his arms. His voice was harsh, with a hint of disbelief. "You transferred $50,000 to her, but you stayed here. Why didn't they leave together? And where were you on the evening of March 18th when she disappeared?" Mark swallowed, his gaze darting between the detective and the sergeant. "I was at home," he said quickly. "1. I watched TV, then went to bed. I don't have an alibi. I know what it looks like, but I didn't touch her. It was Laura who insisted that I stay." "Insisted?" Rita bowed her head. Her tone became a little softer, but her eyes remained cold. "Tell me more. Why didn't you leave with her right away?" Mark leaned back in his chair, ran a hand through his hair, and took a deep breath. "She said I needed to finish things here," he began, his voice shaking with tension. "We had a plan. Laura wanted to leave her husband quietly, without a scandal. She was afraid of him. She said that he was furious, that if he found out about us, he would kill her. I believed it. She convinced me that it would be better if I stayed, closed the last project at work, and transferred to the branch of our company in Miami. We were going to settle there. She had to leave first, prepare everything, find housing, settle down. I gave her money so she could do it." "And you just took her word for it?" Kane chuckled, his gaze full of skepticism. 50,000 is a considerable amount. What if she deceived you? Did she take the money and run away alone?" Mark froze, his face turning pale. He shook his head, but a shadow of doubt flashed in his eyes. "No," he said quietly. "She's not like that. We loved each other. She called me that evening at 6 and said that everything is almost ready. I waited for her message later, but she didn't write. I thought she was already on her way." Rita pulled out another sheet from the folder, a printout of phone calls. "This is confirmed," she said, showing the document. "The last call from Laura was to you at 18:03 and lasted 3 minutes. What did she say exactly?" Mark pursed his lips, remembering. "She was excited," he answered slowly. "She said that everything is almost in place and that she would meet me soon. I asked if everything was okay, but she said, 'Don't worry, I can handle it.' Then the connection was lost. I tried to call back, but her phone was already turned off." Rita and Kane looked at each other. The detective tapped her finger on the table, looking thoughtfully at Mark. "Okay," she said, "let's say you're telling the truth, but you don't have an alibi for the evening of her disappearance. You transferred 50,000 to her and she disappeared. Maybe you found out that she is not going to wait for you. Maybe they went after her, quarreled, and everything got out of control." "No," Mark slammed his fist on the table, his voice breaking. "I didn't touch her. I loved her. If I had known she was in trouble, I would have gone after her. But she said to wait. I'm not a killer." "Calm down." Kane raised his hand, his tone cold. "You have a motive. Money 50,000, that's serious. If she deceived you, it might make you angry. Or maybe you were jealous. Did you find out that she wasn't the only one hanging out with you?" Mark shook his head, his eyes shining with tears. "I wasn't jealous," he said quietly. "I trusted her. She said she wanted to be with me, and I believed her. If anyone had a motive, it was her husband. She was afraid of him. I told you so. He found out about us. He had evidence from the detective. Maybe he killed her." Rita closed the folder and leaned back in her chair, looking carefully at Mark. "We're checking on David Turner," she said. "He has his own problems. Tire tracks from his car at the pier, money stolen from his account. But you, Mr. Evans, are not above suspicion either. Your alibi is shaky, home alone is unconvincing. And there is a motive. If Laura took your money and was not going to wait for you, this could push you to do anything." "I didn't kill her." Mark lowered his head, his voice becoming barely audible. "I was waiting for her. I wanted a new life with her. If she's dead, I don't know what to do." Kane stood up, his shadow falling on the table. "We'll check your story," he said. "Your phone, cameras near your house, if you have them. But for now, you remain under suspicion. Don't leave town, Mr. Evans, and see if you remember anything else." Rita nodded, collecting the papers. "We're done for today," she said, standing up. Mark was silent, looking at the table. His shoulders sagged as if all the air had left him. Rita and Kane left the room, leaving him alone. The door closed with a quiet click, and in the hallway the detective turned to the sergeant. "What do you think?" she asked, her voice quiet. "He's nervous," Kane shrugged. "The alibi is crap. There is a motive. But he's right about his husband. Everything is dirty with Turner, too. Tires, money, evidence of treason. Some of them are lying. Or both. We'll check the cameras at Evans' house," Rita nodded, "and his calls in recent days. If it's clean, that will narrow it down. But I don't like him yet. He is too submissive for a man who has lost 50,000. They headed towards the exit, leaving the room behind them, where Mark was still sitting, staring into emptiness. His words about Laura, about her fear, about her escape plan hung in the air, but the truth remained somewhere outside this small room. There's a knock on the door. David approached the entrance, his heart pounding in his chest. Rita Gonzalez and Sergeant Kane stood in the doorway, but behind them were two uniformed patrolmen, their hands on their belts, near their holsters. Rita's face was stony, and Kane looked at him with cold confidence. "Mr. Turner, we need to talk." Rita stepped forward, her voice firm, without a shadow of its former softness. "And this time, not here. You will come with us." "With you?" David frowned, taking a step back. "For what? What else did you find?" "We have received new data." Kane pulled a piece of paper from his pocket, unfolding it in front of David. "This is an extract from Laura's correspondence with Mark Evans. Message from March 16th. I think he noticed about the money. We must hurry. She was afraid that you would discover transfers or withdrawals from the account. And you found out, right? Yesterday, you yourself said that you checked the account." David froze, looking at the sheet. Laura's words, printed in black and white, hit him like a slap in the face. He shook his head, trying to collect his thoughts. "Yes, I found out yesterday," he said, his voice trembling with anger and fatigue. "But not before. I haven't checked my account for months. She stole 120,000, and I only saw it after you told me about her escape. I didn't know about money before this." "Didn't know?" Kane crossed his arms, his gaze was heavy. "Or did you find out earlier and decided to figure it out? Tire marks from your Ford at the pier, stolen money, evidence of treason from a detective, everything points to you. Laura was afraid that you would find out, and it looks like she was right. This is nonsense." David raised his voice, clenching his fists. "We checked." Rita stepped closer, her tone becoming icy. "The neighbors are confused about the testimony. Some saw your car in the evening, others did not. And the cameras on your street don't cover the entire driveway. There are too many blind spots. We have the tires, the motive, and her fear. That's enough." "Enough for what?" David looked at her, feeling a chill running down his spine. "For arrest." Kane pulled the handcuffs from his belt. His movements were fast and confident. "David Turner, you are under arrest on suspicion of the murder of Laura Turner. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can be used against you in court. You have the right to a lawyer." David stepped back, his eyes widening. "Arrest?" he almost shouted. "Are you serious? You have no body, no evidence, just tired, and she lies to Mark. We have enough to get things moving." Rita raised her hand, stopping him. There is no body, yes, but there is evidence. A car, a shoe, money, tires, and your motive is treason theft. The court will sort it out. In the meantime, you will come with us. Kane stepped forward, grabbing David's hand. The cold metal of the handcuffs clicked on his wrists, and he felt his insides clench. The patrolmen came closer, one of them opened the door, the other stood at the exit. "This is a mistake," David turned to Rita, his voice trembling. "I didn't kill her. She ran away, or Mark did something. Check him out, he gave her 50,000, and he stayed here. Why are you me and not him?" "We are checking the brand," Rita remained adamant. "If you are innocent, prove it in court." Went. Kane pulled him towards the door, and David walked, feeling his legs give way. The neighbors had already gathered on the street. Mrs. Carter stood at her fence, covering her mouth with her hand. Mr. Lopez looked out of the window. Their gazes burned on his back as the patrolman put him into the car. The door slammed, and the world narrowed to the cramped space of the back seat, smelling of leather and metal. The car started moving, and David looked out the window as his house disappeared around the bend. At the station, he was led through a corridor full of noise, telephones ringing, officers' voices, chairs creaking. Rita and Kane walked ahead, talking in low voices. David was taken into a cell small, with bare walls and a narrow bench. The handcuffs were removed, and the door closed with a heavy clang. "Will there be a lawyer?" he asked, looking at Kane through the bars. "If you want, we'll call a government official," Kane shrugged. "Or call yours. You have one call." David nodded, feeling the weariness settle on his shoulders. He was led to a telephone on the wall, and he dialed Tom's number. After 3 rings, the friend answered. "David, where are you?" Tom's voice was alarmed. "At the station," David spoke quietly, clutching the phone. "I was arrested. They said the tires were mine, and Laura was afraid that I would find out about the money." "This is nonsense, Tom. I didn't kill her." "Damn," Tom exhaled. "Arrest? Seriously? What do they need?" "Move things forward," David clenched his teeth. "They don't have a body, but they have a motive and tires. I don't know how they got there. I need a lawyer. Can you find someone?" "I'll find it." Tom lowered his voice. "Hold on, brother. This is a mistake. I'll call a lawyer I know, and he'll sort it out." "Thank you." David hung up, feeling his throat tighten. He was returned to measure, and the door closed again. He sat down on the bench, leaning his back against the cold wall. The silence was deafening, interrupted only by footsteps in the corridor. The police thought he was guilty because of the tires, because of the money, because of her lie to Mark. He didn't know how to prove otherwise. David closed his eyes, remembering Laura. How could his love turn out this way for him? The dim light of a single lamp near the ceiling cast long shadows on the gray walls of the cell. David Turner sat on a narrow bench, leaning his back against the cold concrete, staring into space. His dark hair, now almost completely gray, hung over his forehead, and his eyes, once tired but alive, had dimmed from the months spent here. He spent almost a year, 358 days to be exact, in this cramped cage, awaiting the trial that would decide his fate. But fate, as it turned out, was in no hurry to give answers. The cell smelled damp and metallic. The sounds of the guards' footsteps and the distant voices of other prisoners echoed in the corridor. David was used to this, to the noise, to the cold, to loneliness. The first weeks he rushed about, screamed, demanded a lawyer, and proved his innocence. Then came dullness, followed by a silent determination to survive. Tom, his only friend, did not abandon him. A few days after his arrest, he found a lawyer, John Haley, a short man with sharp eyes and a reputation for not being afraid to dig deeper than the police. David remembered their first meeting. Haley came into the visiting room with a thin folder under his arm and a cup of coffee in his hand, which he immediately placed on the table. "Mr. Turner," he said, sitting down opposite him, "I'm John Haley. Tom said you're in big trouble. Tell everything you know and don't leave out any details. We don't have much time." David then laid it all out. He spoke quickly, haltingly, while Haley listened silently, making notes on a notepad. When David finished, the lawyer leaned back in his chair and thoughtfully tapped his pen on the table. "They don't have a body," he said finally. "This is their weak point. Tires, motive, money, all this is indirect. If we can sow doubt, the matter will fall apart. But you need to hold on. It will take time." Time. It dragged on endlessly. David lost track of the days while Haley worked on his case. The lawyer came once a week, bringing news either about new interrogations of Mark Evans or about how the police were trying to find traces of Laura. But the body was never found, neither in the water at the pier nor anywhere else. This became the anchor that Haley clung to as he built his defense. David recalled one of these visits about 6 months after his arrest. Haley walked in with a small smile, which was rare for him. "There is progress," he said, sitting down. "I requested a reanalysis of the tires. It turned out that the police did not take into account that your Ford is a 2015 model, and there are dozens of them in Tampa. The tread is the same, but the wear is different. They can't prove that it's really your car. Plus GPS from your phone and car, you were home after 10 in the evening. This is not an ironclad alibi, but it adds doubt. And the neighbors?" David leaned forward, his voice hoarse from the long silence. They were confused. "Exactly," Haley nodded. Mrs. Carter admitted that she might have gotten the days mixed up. Miss Henderson refused to testify at all. Her eyesight was no good. They have no witnesses who would definitely see you at the pier. And without a body, this is just speculation. David then felt a small spark of hope, but it quickly faded under the weight of reality. He was in prison. His job as an engineer in a construction company was a thing of the past. Colleagues, having learned about the arrest, turned away. Friends, except Tom, disappeared. Even my parents living in Georgia stopped calling after the first months. Their letters came less and less, and then stopped altogether. The reputation he had built over the years collapsed like a house of cards, and all because of Laura. Life in prison was harsh. David kept to himself, avoiding conflicts with other prisoners. He was quiet, unnoticeable, just another number in the system. The food, tasteless porridge and tough meat, barely satisfied my hunger. Sleep came in fits and starts, interrupted by nightmares. Laura at the pier, her shoe in the water, her voice accusing him. He would wake up in a cold sweat, clenching his fists until he remembered where he was. Tom visited him once a month, bringing news from the outside world. On one of these visits, around the 9th month of his imprisonment, he came with a bottle of water and a tired look. "How are you, brother?" he asked, sitting down opposite through the glass. "Like hell," David smiled faintly. "And you?" "Okay," Tom shrugged. "I work, I live. Haley says the case is shaky. He digs under the police like a mole. They are pressing, but there is little evidence. How are you holding up?" "I'm trying." David lowered his gaze. "Thank you for not quitting. You're the only one left." "Leave you?" Tom snorted. "No way." These words warmed me, but did not relieve the heaviness. David knew that even if he was released, life would never be the same. Neighbors, colleagues, the whole city saw him as a murderer even without a conviction. His reputation was destroyed, and he did not know how to restore it. The court hearing took place 11 months after the arrest. David stood before the judge in the cheap suit that Tom had brought him the day before. The hall was almost empty, only Haley, Tom, and a few journalists eager for a sensation. The prosecutor, a young man with a sharp chin, insisted on guilt, tires, money, motive. But Haley was relentless. "Your Honor," he began, his voice calm but firm, "the prosecution has no direct evidence." "Nobody" means no proof of murder. Tire tracks. The 2015 Ford F-150 is one of the most common models in Tampa Bay. Tread wear is different, and this is confirmed by independent testing. My client's GPS and phone data indicate he was home after 10 p.m. Neighbors. Their testimony is unreliable, confusion in dates, poor vision. Motive? Yes, he knew about the betrayal, but he wanted a divorce, not revenge. We don't have a case, we have assumptions. The judge, an elderly woman with a tired look, listened in silence, leafing through the documents. The prosecutor tried to object, but his arguments sounded weak without a body. Everything rested on circumstantial evidence, which Haley undermined over and over again. After 2 hours of hearing, the judge banged her gavel. Given the lack of direct evidence and the dubiousness of the evidence presented, the court drops the charges against David Turner. Her voice was dry, official. "You are free, Mr. Turner." David froze, not believing his ears. Tom patted him on the shoulder. Haley nodded with a slight smile. The cell opened, and he was released almost a year after he was put there. But freedom did not bring relief. He returned home in Tom's car. 142 South Bay Road looked the same. Palm trees along the road, a white fence, the familiar smell of the sea. But the house seemed alien. The windows were dusty, the grass on the lawn was knee-deep, and the mailbox was filled with advertisements and bills. David walked inside, and the silence hit him like a slap in the face. Everything remained as it was that evening. The divorce papers had disappeared, taken away by the police, but the whiskey glass was still on the table, covered with a layer of dust. Tom came in next, carrying a bag with David's things. "Well, brother, you're home," he said, putting his bag on the floor. "We should clean up and buy beer. Shall we celebrate?" "Yes," David nodded, but his voice was empty. "Thank you, Tom, for everything." "You're welcome," Tom patted him on the back. "You would do the same for me. Now we need to move on with our lives. Haley is a fucking genius. Got you out." David smiled faintly, but did not feel joy. He walked into the living room, sat down on the sofa, and looked around. Everything was familiar, but alien. A year in prison took away more than just his time. He lost his job, his friends, his reputation. The neighbors who had previously waved to him over the fence now looked on warily. He noticed this on the way. Mrs. Carter, watering flowers, turned away when their car passed by. Mr. Lopez closed the curtains as soon as David got out of the car. "They think I'm guilty," he said quietly, looking at Tom, "even without a trial. To them, I'm a killer. Let them think what they want." Tom sat down next to him, opening the bottle of water he brought with him. "The main thing is that you are free. We know the truth. Laura either ran away or someone else did it, not you. I'll stay today and help with the cleaning. And tomorrow we'll order pizza, just like in the old days. Agree?" "I agree," David smiled faintly, feeling something like warmth for the first time in a year. They began to clean up, wiping off the dust, taking out the trash, opening the windows to let in fresh air. But every sound outside the window steps, the creaking of the gate, made David wince. He knew that neighbors were whispering, that rumors about him had spread like wildfire across Tampa Bay. Murderer husband, miraculously escaped trial. He could imagine headlines in local newspapers, looks in the store, job refusals. The reputation was destroyed, and no court decision could fix it. At night, he lay down on the sofa. He could not sleep in the bedroom, where Laura still smelled. Tom settled into a chair, turning on an old movie on the TV. The noise of voices from the speakers was the only thing that broke the silence. 2 days have passed since David returned home. Cleaning with Tom brought the house back to life a little. The dust disappeared, the windows sparkled, the smell of damp was replaced by the sea breeze coming through the open shutters. But nothing had changed inside David. The emptiness and anger still gnawed at him, like uninvited guests who could not be kicked out. Tom left in the morning, promising to return with pizza in the evening, leaving David alone with his thoughts. He sat on the sofa, looking at the calendar on the wall. Exactly a year since Laura disappeared. The date struck him like lightning. A year ago, he was waiting for her with divorce papers. A year ago, his life fell into the abyss from which he had just climbed out, or thought he had climbed out. Pier, he hadn't been there since it all happened, but today something inside him pushed him to stand up. David grabbed his jacket and keys and left the house, not wondering where he was going until he found himself behind the wheel of his Ford, heading towards old Tampa Bay. The journey took 20 minutes. The wind from the bay drove the waves, which lazily beat against the wooden pilings of the pier. The sun was setting, turning the sky orange and pink, just like that evening when he was waiting for Laura at home. David parked at the edge where her white Hyundai had been parked a year ago and got out of the car. The air was salty, cool, with a taste of freedom that he still did not feel. He walked along the creaking boards of the pier, looking out over the water where her shoe had been found. There was no trace of that day, here no car, no police tape, only silence and the whisper of the waves. He stopped at the edge, looking down. The water was dark, opaque, hiding secrets that he never solved. Where is she? Is she alive? Or lies somewhere at the bottom, taking his money and his life with it? David clenched his fists, feeling the anger rise again in his chest. He didn't notice someone approaching from behind until he heard a quiet voice. David. He turned around sharply, ready for anything, but froze when he saw Mark Evans. He stood a few steps away, holding a bouquet of white lilies in his hands. His dark hair was slightly longer than in the detective's photographs, and his face was drawn, as if the year had squeezed all his strength out of him. He was wearing a simple jacket and jeans, no bossy bearing, only fatigue and something similar to regret in his eyes. "What are you doing here?" David's voice was hoarse, harsh, full of suppressed rage. Mark raised his hand with flowers, as if in defense. "I came here," he said quietly. "Today is a new year. I wanted to leave it for her. I didn't know you'd be here, too." David stepped forward, his fists clenching even tighter. "Flowers? For her?" He almost spat out the words. "You slept with my wife, gave her 50,000, and now you bring flowers? Do you even realize that because of you, I spent a year in prison?" Mark looked down, his shoulders slumping. "I know," he said, his voice trembling, "and I'm sorry. I didn't want it to happen like this. I came here not for you, but for her. And I'm sorry. Are you sorry for ruining my life?" "That I regret that I met her behind your back." Mark raised his eyes, pain sparkling in them. "Men don't do that. But she wasn't just fun for me, David. I loved her, and I regret that I didn't convince her to just file for divorce. Maybe if I had done that, she would be alive now." David froze, Mark's words hitting him like cold water. He expected excuses, lies, anything, but not this. Mark stepped closer, holding the flowers in front of him. "I didn't know she was withdrawing money from your account," he continued, his voice quiet but firm. "She told me that she had savings and that she could handle it herself. I gave her 50,000 because I believed her. She said that you are furious, that you will kill her if you find out. I thought she was in danger, but now, I'm not sure what to believe." David gritted his teeth, feeling anger mixed with confusion. "I wasn't violent," he said, his voice shaking. "I knew about you. I had evidence from the detective. I wanted a divorce, not her death. She was the one who lied to you, Mark." Mark nodded, his gaze lowering to the water. David looked at him, trying to understand. Mark didn't look like an enemy, not yet. He looked broken, like a man who had lost more than money. The bouquet in his hands trembled in the wind, the lily petals swayed, ready to fall. "Why didn't you leave with her right away?" David asked, his voice becoming quieter. "You gave her money, but you stayed." "Why?" Mark pursed his lips, his eyes sparkling. "She convinced me," he said. "She said that I needed to close the project at work and transfer to the branch in Miami, that she would leave first and prepare everything. I believed her, though she knew what she was doing. If I had gone with her right away, maybe everything would have been different." David turned away, looking at the water. The waves lapped lazily against the pier, taking with them the silence between them. He didn't know whether to believe Mark. Part of him wanted to hit him, to throw out all the rage that had been building up for a year. But the other part, the one that was tired of lies and pain, did not see him as an enemy. "Do you think she's alive?" he asked finally, without looking at Mark. "I don't know," Mark shrugged, his voice barely audible. "Sometimes I hope so. I would like to believe." Mark stepped to the edge of the pier and knelt down, placing flowers on the boards. He paused for a moment, looking at the water, then stood up and turned to David. "I'm sorry," he said again, "not only for her, but also for what happened to you." David was silent, looking at the flowers. White lilies lay on a dark tree, like a reminder of what he had lost, not just Laura, but himself. He didn't know if he would ever forgive Mark, but the anger that had been boiling inside him began to fade, giving way to fatigue. "I lost her too," he said finally, "but I didn't kill her." Mark nodded, his gaze full of understanding. He turned and walked away, his figure disappearing into the twilight, leaving David alone at the edge of the pier. David looked at the flowers, feeling the wind cool his face. The days after returning home flowed slowly, like thick syrup, leaving a sticky residue in David Turner's soul. Cleaning with Tom brought the illusion of order to the house, the dust disappeared, the windows sparkled, the air became fresh, but nothing changed inside David. A year in prison left scars that did not heal. Gray hair, dull eyes, hands trembling with fatigue and anger. His reputation was destroyed, his neighbors looked at him with caution, and his job, the one that had once been his pride, was a thing of the past. He was free, but freedom felt like a new cage, only without bars. Tom, loyal as a rock, did not retreat. On the third day after his release, he showed up with 2 bottles of beer and a wide smile that seemed out of place in this gloomy house. "Well, brother, stop being sour," he said, putting the bottles on the table and plopping down on the sofa. "I talked to one guy. He has a construction company in Sarasota looking for an engineer. Not Tampa, of course, but a job is a job. Are you in?" David looked up from the floor, where he was mindlessly studying the cracks in the boards. Sarasota is a neighboring state, an hour's drive from Tampa Bay. Not too far, but enough to escape the prying eyes of neighbors and whispers behind your back. "Job?" he asked. His voice was hoarse, as if he was not used to long sentences. "They will take a person with such. A past?" I told him everything. Tom shrugged, opening the beer with a characteristic hiss. "Well, in general terms, he said that you were framed, the case fell apart, you are clean. He's a normal guy, Jack calls him. He said that he would give you a chance if you still remember how to draw plans and are not afraid of dirty work. Do you remember?" David smiled faintly for the first time in a long time. He nodded, feeling something warm move in his chest. Tom was his anchor, the only one who didn't turn away when the whole world fell apart. "I remember," he said quietly. "Thank you, Tom. You don't have to." "Shut up." Tom waved his hand, interrupting him. "Obligated or not, what difference does it make? You would do the same for me. Tomorrow we'll go to Jack and talk to him. Today I drank beer and relaxed. Life begins again, brother." David took the bottle. The cold glass pleasantly burned his palm. He took a sip, feeling the bitter taste awaken something long forgotten. Maybe Tom is right. Maybe this is a chance, not just a job, but an opportunity to get away from the past, from Tampa Bay, from the glances of Mrs. Carter and the whispers behind her back. He nodded, agreeing not so much with Tom as with himself. The next day they drove to Sarasota. The morning was clear, the sky over the bay sparkled blue, and the wind drove white clouds like a flock of birds. David sat in the passenger seat of Tom's old pickup truck, looking out the window. The road wound along the coast, past palm trees and beaches where tourists were already laying out their towels. He felt like a stranger in this bright world, a man who had been looking at the gray walls for too long. Jack turned out to be a strong man of about 50, with a thick beard and hands covered with calluses. His office, a small trailer on a construction site, smelled of wood and coffee. He greeted David with a handshake so strong that he almost winced. "Tom said you're an engineer." Jack sat down at the table, littered with drawings, and nodded to the chair opposite. "And that you had problems with the law, but everything fell apart. This is true?" "True," David nodded, looking into his eyes. "I was accused of murdering my wife. I am not guilty." Jack chuckled, scratching his beard. "Honestly, right?" he said. "I don't care about gossip, as long as you know your business. We are building a residential complex here. We need a person who can rummage through the loads and drawings. Can you start on Monday?" David froze, not expecting such a quick answer. He nodded, feeling the tension in his chest release slightly. "I can," he said. "Thank you." "Don't thank me," Jack waved his hand. "Prove it with action. Tom vouched for you, and I trust him. Don't let me down." They shook hands and David walked out of the trailer feeling a little giddy. Job. First one in a year. Tom waited by the pickup, arms crossed and grinning. "Well, engineer, are you up to speed?" he asked, tapping David on the shoulder. In action, David nodded, feeling his lips twitch into a smile. "Thank you, brother. Let's go home and celebrate." Tom got behind the wheel, and they drove back to Tampa Bay. Monday came quickly. David packed an old backpack, some pencils, a ruler, a laptop, which Tom helped fix. Jack gave him his first task, to check the foundation drawings for the new building of the complex. The work was familiar, almost familiar, and he plunged into it with unexpected zeal. Numbers, lines, calculations, this was a language that he understood, a language that did not judge him. Colleagues, a couple of young guys and one silent veteran, were wary, but Jack quickly stopped any questions. "He knows his stuff," he said at the morning meeting, looking at the team. "The rest does not concern you." The days passed faster. David worked from morning to evening, returning to Tampa Bay tired, but with the feeling that life was slowly returning to normal. Tom called every evening to check how things were going, sometimes stopping by with beer or pizza. They sat on the porch, watching the sunset, and talked about anything about work, about old times, about how one day they would go fishing like they used to. Laura was rarely mentioned, but her shadow still hung over them like a cloud that wouldn't go away. A month later, Jack approached David at a construction site, holding a folder in his hands. "There's a business trip," he said, handing over the papers. "We need to go to Naples, check the supply of materials, and meet with the contractor. 2 days, hotel at my expense. Can you handle it?" "I can handle it," David nodded, taking the folder. Naples is another city in a neighboring state, south of Sarasota. New trip, new faces. This was what he needed. He left the next day, taking his Ford, the same one whose tires almost sent him to jail forever. The journey took 3 hours. Highway, palm trees, endless strips of asphalt leading to the bay. Naples greeted him with heat and noise. Tourists filled the streets. Cafes were buzzing. The smell of the sea mixed with the aroma of coffee and fried fish. David checked into a small hotel near the beach, threw his backpack on the bed, and went to meet the contractor. The work went smoothly. The materials were checked, the papers were signed. Jack was satisfied with the report over the phone. In the evening, having freed himself earlier than expected, David decided to take a walk. He left the stuffy office, where he had been sorting out papers all day, signing documents and listening to endless calls. The freedom of this evening seemed almost accidental, like a gift that he had not asked for, but which now lay in his hands. The streets of Naples were buzzing with life. Music flowed from the open doors of bars. Children ran screaming along the sidewalks, clutching melting ice cream in their sticky fingers. Couples strolled along the embankment, their laughter and snatches of conversation dissolving in the warm air. The sunset painted the sky golden and pink, reflected in the water of the bay, and for the first time in a long time, David felt that he could breathe. The air here was salty, with a hint of flowers and fried food from street cafes, not at all the smell he had become accustomed to during his years in Tampa Bay, where dust, sweat, and concrete permeated everything around him, or in prison, where the air was thick with dampness and hopelessness. He walked without a goal, simply letting his legs carry him forward. His gaze slid over the passers-by, an old man with a cane shuffling along a shop window, a young woman with a stroller, tourists with cameras clicking the sunset. The buildings around were low, painted in pastel colors: yellow, blue, cream, with cracked plaster and faded signs. It was Naples, a city he had chosen by chance, simply by pointing his finger at a map after he was released. He didn't know what he was looking for here, but he knew exactly what he was avoiding: the past that clung to him like a shadow from which it was impossible to escape. His thoughts were interrupted when his gaze caught on a woman standing at a flower stall on the street corner. The stall was small, with peeling paint on the wooden walls, surrounded by buckets of roses, lilies, and carnations, their scent mingling with the salty wind from the bay. She stood there, of average height, with shoulder-length straight blonde hair, wearing a light blue dress that fluttered in the wind. Something in her posture, the way she bowed her head, carefully examining the bouquet, the slight curve of her neck pricked him like a forgotten chord from an old song. David slowed down, his heart suddenly beating faster, although he couldn't understand why. She raised her hand to straighten a lock of hair, and at that moment the light of a street lamp fell on her skin, highlighting a small dark mole just above her right wrist. The woman turned, casting a short glance at him just a second, but it was enough. Her eyes were blue, with a slight sparkle, like the morning sky over the bay. Like Laura. Hi, Laura. She immediately looked away, hastily grabbed a bouquet of roses red, with drops of water on the petals, and left, almost running, her heels clicking on the paving stones. She turned the corner, and a moment later her blue silhouette disappeared into the crowd. David froze in the middle of the sidewalk, feeling the blood pounding in his temples. People flowed around him like a river flows around a stone, but he did not notice them. It couldn't be her. Or could she? My mind insisted that this was stupidity, a coincidence. How many women with the same blonde hair walk the streets of Naples? How many of them wear blue dresses and buy flowers in the evening? But something deeper than the mind, something in the chest, whispered, "This is her." He stood looking into the void where she disappeared until her figure completely disappeared into the crowd. He didn't move, afraid to run after her and be a laughing stock in front of himself, but also unable to simply leave, as if his feet were rooted to the ground. He didn't know how long he stood there, a minute, 5, 10. Time stretched out like rubber until he finally forced himself to move. His feet carried him back to the hotel, a small building with a peeling sea breeze sign, where he rented a room on the second floor. Once inside, he walked past the reception desk. An elderly woman with knitting in her hands, who did not even look up, climbed the creaky stairs and collapsed on the bed without undressing. The light from the street lamps filtered through the thin curtains, creating trembling streaks on the ceiling. David closed his eyes, but sleep did not come. Instead, that woman appeared in front of him, her gaze, her movements, her hasty departure. He began to replay the moment over and over again, looking for details, clinging to them like a drowning man clutching at a straw. And another gesture, light, almost imperceptible, when she brushed a strand of hair from her face. The same one that he had seen 1,000 times. At dinner, when she talked about work, in the car, when they argued about the route at home, when she sat with a book by the window. It was not just a gesture, it was her manner, her essence, engraved in his memory deeper than he himself realized. David sat up in bed, his breathing became heavy and ragged. It was her, Laura, alive, here in Naples or somewhere further away. With his money, with Mark's money, the very ones for which she disappeared, leaving him to rot in prison, destroying his life, his career, his faith in people. She ran away, leaving him at the mercy of investigators, lawyers, and judges, while he tried to prove that he did not take the money, that he did not know where it went. And all this time she lived as if nothing had happened. The anger he had been suppressing all this time burst out like lava, hot and uncontrollable. He jumped out of bed and walked around the room, clenching and unclenching his fists. The floorboards creaked under his steps, but he did not hear them. Thoughts were confused, fragments of memories flashed in my head. Her smile, her voice, her last, "I love you." One thought cut through the chaos in my head, clear as a ray of light in the darkness. He would find her. To look her in the eyes and ask, why? To understand how she could do this, how she could pretend all those years, how she could sleep next to him, knowing that one day she would betray him. He wanted back what she had stolen, not just the money, but his life, his dignity, his faith that the world could be just. David lay back on the bed, looking at the ceiling. The darkness of the room enveloped him, but inside there was a fire that did not go out. He clenched his fists so that his nails dug into his palms, leaving red crescents on the skin, and whispered, almost growled, "What a bitch. I'll find you." To be continued. Subscribe to the channel and click on the bell so you don't miss the next part of this story. She will be there very soon. The link to the sequel will be in the description of this video below. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.